And today we're announcing a way forward. And it's been a difficult journey. I'm joined, of course, by my colleagues, George Heyman, the Minister of Environment and Climate Action Solutions, and Minister Michelle Mungal, the Minister of Energy, Mines and Petroleum Resources. We've had a whole team of people working on this file. Carol James is not with us today. She is in Ottawa with the first, Finance Minister's meeting, and Scott Fraser could not be here as well. So the team of the four of us, the four of my colleagues and I, will be focusing on how we go forward from here with the decision on Site C. And so whether or not to proceed or not proceed with this task has been a very, very difficult issue. I've sat across the kitchen table from people who live on the river. I've sat with Indigenous peoples across the province and also in the Treaty 8 territory. I've talked to workers whose livelihood depend on this project. And I've talked to many more people, regular British Columbians from every walk of life in every corner of this province. And I can say without any hesitation, this is a very, very divisive issue. And it will have profound impacts, not just on the people that I met in the region, not just on the people who are working on the site today, but all British Columbians, this generation and the next generation. And we have not taken this decision lightly. Our priority as a government was to ensure that when we make a decision on this, it was consistent with our values that would be in the best interest of British Columbians, to make life more affordable, to ensure that the services people count on are there for them when they need them, to make sure that BC Hydro works for British Columbians, and also that true reconciliation with Indigenous peoples was part and parcel of our quest to create jobs in an environmentally sustainable way. And for many years, I have been extremely critical of the BC Liberal decision to proceed with this project. I questioned their motivations, I questioned their assumptions, I questioned their business case and their budgets. And we demanded for years that the BC Liberals go to the Utilities Commission, an independent body, to get accurate information to dispel the concerns of British Columbians, and the Liberals chose to ignore that. They got to the point of no return. That was their whole point. It wasn't about public policy, it wasn't about energy policy, it wasn't about the best interest of British Columbians, it was about getting a project past the point of no return. Worse, the mismanagement of BC Hydro over the past number of years has led to multiple-digit increases in rates for people, 24% over the past 4 years, some 70+% since 2001. Hydro's accounts were rated to balance the budget, and they were called upon to build projects that weren't necessarily consistent with the need and timing of their forecasts going forward. For these reasons and many more, we campaigned on a platform to send the question of BC Hydro's Site C project to the Utilities Commission, and we delivered on that commitment. The Commission validated many of our concerns about the cost overruns, some $1 billion to this point in time, and they made it abundantly clear that there were alternatives available to us, available to BC Hydro, that may be less cost if you forego the sunk costs, and may be in our best interest going forward. They gave us, sadly, just one clear choice. That was to proceed with a $10.7 billion project, or cancel that project and absorb $4 billion in construction and remediation costs. Now, I want to speak directly right now to the people who have demanded that we cancel the project. I respect the strength of your convictions and your concerns about the future of BC Hydro and British Columbia. I share your determination to protect BC's farmland and reduce the impact of energy developments now and into the future. We agree that decisions like this must be done in tandem and in concert with Indigenous peoples, but those challenges have passed. The previous government made decisions to proceed, leaving some of those questions unanswered. I know many of us would wish that the circumstances were different, but I and my colleagues have to accept the situation as we find it, not as how we wish it would be. We have listened, we have deliberated, and we have debated. And at the end of the day, we've come to the conclusion that although Site C is not the project we would have favored, and it's not the project we would have started, it must be completed to meet the objectives our government has set through mandate letters to ministers and commitments to the people of BC during the election campaign. Although Site C will cost more than $10 billion to complete, those costs can be recovered over a long period of time by the sale of electricity. Cancelling the project would mean a $4 billion hit, an unavoidable $4 billion hit immediately, either on BC Hydro's books are on the books of the Minister of Finance. The consequences of that would be a 12% rate increase almost immediately and foregoing very important capital projects like schools and hospitals, bridges and transit, and other initiatives right across British Columbia. I know that this decision will be profoundly important to many, many British Columbians. Family members of mine, friends of mine, will be very, very disappointed with this. But we came to this conclusion openly by ensuring that we did the best we could possibly do to have all of the issues on the table. We've done that, and we've come to the conclusion that proceeding is the best way forward. In doing so, we're going to put in place a number of initiatives to lessen the burden on BC Hydro and on British Columbians. Firstly, we're going to announce a series of initiatives, starting with a food security fund to ensure that we're increasing the productivity of our agricultural land and making it more viable to farm, not just in the Peace, but right across British Columbia. We're going to introduce new measures by reopening the standing offer program at BC Hydro so that Indigenous people can build clean, renewable energy to put into the grid to make life better for British Columbians. We're going to make sure that the projects going forward consist of project labor agreements, community benefit agreements that will ensure that we have training opportunities much better than the 49 apprentices we have in place today. We want to get those numbers up as high as we possibly can. We want to make sure local businesses will benefit and local workers get access to the jobs. And lastly, we're going to put in place a new oversight committee to make sure that the current budget is met in the next number of years. Again, I want to stress that this is not a project that we favored. It's not a project we would have started. But we're 3 years in. A decision made in this very foyer in 2014 put Michelle and George and I in a position to make a decision that is not an easy one. We do it with a heavy heart, but we have to focus on the future. We have to focus on delivering for people. That's what we intend to do. Thank you very much for being here this morning. In terms of the final costs of this project, it's a massive capital project, the largest BC Hydro has ever done. We're putting in place a new project oversight team. We put more money in the contingency side to make sure that we can meet that objective. But the guarantee I give to British Columbians is that we're going to work as hard as we can to deliver on the projects and the issues that we ran on, and that is making life more affordable. That means keeping hydro costs down, providing services for people like childcare. If we have to increase our debt servicing costs by $150 to $200 million, we won't be able to deliver childcare in the term of this government. That's a commitment we made to address the issues that we campaigned on, making life more affordable, making sure that we're building schools and hospitals. If we absorbed $4 billion in debt, we couldn't do that. And I was not prepared to foreclose on the future generations by making a decision today that would make me feel good. British Columbians have been grappling with this issue for 40 years, and I don't have a magic solution, but I have the best solution we can come up with in the time I have as Premier to make sure we're doing the least amount of damage to BC Hydro, to the people of British Columbia, and in fact, looking at turning a page and making the best of a bad situation.